Hello again, my people. Skywalker here, speaking light from darkness. I raise topics to bring us to seeing eye to eye. You can hit the notification bell and subscribe to keep up with the discourse. In the beginning was Word and Subject. These two were one. The Word is ever attracted to the subject to define, complement, or complete it. We see that detractors subtract the matter from these holistic affairs all the time. Word can make no sense without subject, and subject cannot be without word. One is ever hidden in the other. We do not acknowledge these factors when we subject to modern day religions are subject to prejudicial beliefs. When we uncover their witchcraft and point out the spells, when we move to be free, we will see all parts of all equations. Word had no intercourse without the subject. We did not achieve conception that way. Man conceives by all means of intercourse, but any abomination will bring forth bastards or reprobates of God's intrinsic nature. If someone has homosexual intercourse, he creates spiritual offsprings. Understand that not all creations must be seen by mundane principles. Word in action brings forth words by definition. Something is always spoken into being, but it takes deeper discerning to comprehend. It is hard for those that see to point directions to the blind, so we must open our eyes and keep it open. Understand that word is alive. It defines a purpose, the will to be and become called to action. Everything is intercourse, and each relationship speaks word into being. Every equation affects peripheral others. You step forward of about without realizing there is another dynamic and a whole new sphere that you created with the back foot pushing backward to drive you forward. Diverse things take place, but outside of your peripheral vision and underneath the radar. If your actions are pure, all those peripheral actions will be naturally pure. If you do an abominable action, it is useful to know what you bring inside this realm. 1 plus 1 equals 2 also has subliminal truths that you won't bother to acknowledge because of your own specifics in that moment, but they are affected by the equation. A man sleeping with a woman invokes natural equations by diseased condition, by a corrupted nature, or by a reprobate mindset, or for whatever it might be. Those that polarize the equation brings corruptibility to the sphere in more ways than one. These dimensional injuries cross spiritual, mental, and physical realms. Most of these are obvious, but at other times, these issues we will discuss. I do not debate about sexual preferences, but I speak about and I totally endorse one's natural rights. I give no one the right to interfere with me, and I would not choose to interfere with others. We all know what is right and what is wrong. Many of us will ask others to pretend with them by entertaining a silly debate as if it might possibly make sense to choose the wrong. I have too much to do than to accommodate that. I don't care as long as you do yourself, and that's it. I only mention this as necessary to speak about the art and science of evil witchcraft by way of dark sex magic. To get to greater clarity, we take time to observe basic principles of the powers of sex magic. By taking these simple and natural approaches, we get to acknowledging the topic without conjuring any adverse sense of superstition, which is the natural barriers created to contain you. It's similar to how one can use the word conspiracy theory as a trigger to stop you from learning or leaning on your own understanding. If your mind is weak, you will stop acknowledging the proof of the obvious, only to surrender and succumb to believing your masters. By walking with science, we stay in compatible mode. What destroyed your world is sex magic. That's it. Black males are still traumatized by any suggestion of homosexual power in their regions. Their aggression is no fault of theirs. It is a defense against past and present attacks. Our full embedded demons are also why the black woman will adore a racist white man who is underclass among his own but hate a black man who sees her as equal and has a higher status across the board. If a black woman claims she prefers a black man, watch and see whom she dresses for, and you might be amazed. There is the part of the spell that now works below the radar at the subconscious level. She has the fear of the Lord in her. She will bring everything and every child she has to Jesus, and she will also bring her racial pride and her integrity too. Just turn on a YouTube and look at the next black woman who is speaking on behalf of her race and tell me what you notice. Yes, she is trying to look white in order to feel like she looks good, and she will lie and say that it's what the black man who cusses it out every day wants. For various reasons, the black man's reaction to the similar trauma is different, which is why he will stay loyal to self than more often than not. All these are the results of sex magic, and the trigger words are in the English vocabulary or prescribed religious scriptures. It is so much to say and to expose, but we have just begun. There is no greater way to prove the submissiveness of a male servant than to have him demonstrate the effeminate character. Sex magic, the way of obtaining submissiveness on most humans and mankind that have weaker mindsets and will. So when P. Diddy makes this male submit, then his handlers are happy because this one will stay in line. This spell work better on the females than on the males in terms of the collective black man's experience. But the evil shadow demons use the female to hold sway against the males. Again, this has failed, for the male is releasing the female and disempowering the beast. So she cannot pull the rope for the master. At first, it will seem like a victory for that demon anyway, as when the Germanic people went the same route, it was near death to their population. So they figured that uh, even though the black man might be releasing the black woman when she tugs at his leech. You say it leech because they have him like a dog in it. It will cause a problem because of the division, and that in the case of these Germanic people, they were not having many children, so their population was not even at zero level, it was minus, and their population was going down fast. So they believe that they are still striking gold, but however, this is a totally different case. Sometimes the problem is what you don't see, and sometimes it must remain that way. You don't see what you don't see. Already, the energies have changed. The captives survive until the energies change, and because the energies change, the captive is now victorious. It might take a while for many to see this. Like the night you look at the winning lottery ticket, you realize you won. It will take a while before this good fortune is exposed in your life. Perpetual motion is a joy in its poetry. Most people are ignorant to spiritual wars. They are sheep that shepherd sheep without intelligence or understanding. They scream at their own children, saying, "Get inside the water," and will never hear that the villain was lying and that there is a live electrical cord inside there, and this is why the child will not go in. They say you are disturbing the peace and disobeying the right, and claim that it is wrong to not mix natural design with the abominations. Emmanuel monsters used the white man against the earth civilization to divide and rule in the same way that the white world uses the black woman against the black man to break their cultures and societies. There is always that notion that superior benefits are in it, when in fact they are the dispensable ones that will be destroyed. It's like bringing an outsider to a robbery because he is slim enough to fit through the bars and then getting rid of him. The demon plan for the world coming up does not include some of the players you would expect of both black and white. Sometimes truth is hidden so well because it is exactly the opposite of what you will think. Shocking. Someone said something about using the reprobate mind of a reprobate to separate the wheat from the tares, and then seeing who will that reprobate blame but himself. Truth has no regard for sentiments. It is what it is, although you hate to agree with it. With leaders, white leaders, white leaders, white leaders destroy the humanity of their white populations because of their hate and envy for the black population. Think about that. And you think it is because they love them. You do not see what is behind the veil. Speech and language is intercourse. Word is alive because it is generic consciousness. I don't mean that word is alive as an allegory. If you cannot understand that word is alive means word is alive, you will never cross to a higher path. You have then said, "In the beginning was word." Well, it manifested as all that breathes and lives. When you learn to discern the subject by observing words that were spoken around that subject from their roots, you will uncover sorcery, and you will know and understand that it is not just mankind trying to create a working society. It is not just the human trying to raise his head from an ugly past. It is those entities that submerge and suppress them to energy harvest on them. They understand these secrets of intercourse. This is why your Bible is named after testicles. This is why your Bible is a book of spell, and I can show you every last one of them if you let me. Sorry, you cannot cross this bridge without the trauma. You have to be traumatized to see this. Word has power, and this too will prove the point. I will use a term that many of you cannot free your minds to not hate, although the words you prefer will not suffice. This is because your alpha mode is being affected. They use these living words that restrict and shackle other words to keep you in subject mode. Words are alive and they kill some of them. They restrict them. There is no such thing as being indecent, but it's hard to talk down to a masculine vice. The more these spells are used against you, the more your skin will crawl when certain extremely dominant words are used at you in too much of a free-minded or free-spirited mode. This is not to say that people should pepper you with words that you don't like. You know, everything is relative, right? And everything is conditional. You can say the phrase "your ass" in Jamaica with no consequences, but if you say it in Jamaica patois, you can get locked up for it. And when Christians hear it spoken in their own language, their skins crawl and they say that it is indecent. When they hear it in English, it's all right. This is what I tell you is an intrusive demon spell. You believe it is right and accurate because how you were incited to feel about it. It has nothing to do with logics. It is not. You are under a spell. I remember this word that was in the dictionary, but we could not speak it. How does that make sense? You can't take away the word sword and then expect to define it as knife to the same effect. One way to create a passive subjective mind is by destroying the king alpha to exploit the subject omega. They must ravage and mindfuck you. You won't like what is put into you or the powers that hover over you, but you will be forced to take it. There is no better word to explain this aspect of sex magic, this evil violation, like them using the word law to defile you at your own will. They use the word testaments to name the book you call the Bible that you worship from, that you say are the words of your God. They name it off their balls. Isn't that worse than saying the word fuck? It is not intercourse. It is not intercourse. Intercourse is the first act of creation. It is not sex. Sex is the order of a divine ritual. That's what you have with your husband. Understand that there is only one word to use here. It is not a decent thing like two people that love each other that makes out in love. It is an evil and godly dark thing where intelligent folks become as low as animals and they lean on a car in the park and do a careless fuck with decent people watching, offended as you are when you hear the word fuck. It is the right descriptive word. Polarize and transcend the trauma of having to hear it by accepting that it is what it is. Word is alpha. The penis and that inherent subject omega is like unto the feminine port to intercourse. Plug and socket. None of these has ever had beginning or ending of days. Both are equal and they seek each other out to eternity. When we speak, we make intercourse. Masculine and feminine forms are intrinsic in that which was and defining it as an ideal. Respect the DNA of words. We can go so deep by observing words that you will not believe. The Africans understood all these things in the past, so their words always told the story, keeping the trail intact to the DNA of Akasha. I can find an African word, and by this I can tell the secret about an entire lineage, just like you reading a book. I could go to Egypt and see a name, even that was defiled by the ancient invaders, but I still find their DNA. The info is connected to source and source connected to us by DNA. This info will open the file of Akasha and the knowledge will flow like magic. However, the usurpers attack these intrinsic connections and start to pose a weak language that is void of history to replace all that is intrinsic, and they say this is the world language. Control their vocabulary, words, and meanings, and they will be in trouble. At least this is what they believe. Most people would be in trouble. Some beings cannot be detached from root. And I can say, Zeus, God, was from Ethiopia, and he traveled through the tributary in Egypt to the tributary in Greece. But Greece was not at that time a white society. At that time, their women wore dreadlocks. Let's not go into how I do this. One day it will seem natural, maybe when scientists give the masses permission to know. Although scientists do similar stuff when they give you a DNA test, right? A part of their mindfuck is to corrupt the words that lead to the root. They corrupt the words that lead you to the root. So you can go and get connected to Akasha. Once you connect a trigger, you awake the Akasha. Once you put in the right search result on Google, you bring up the information because all things compatible are within that same zone. God could not be male without the female. Both are superior. They are not the same. If the word and the subject were the same, then creation could never be. The critical reason is what makes matter. By questioning the difference to define the ideal, together they create and equally perform with conscience and as conscience, for they cannot be unequal or unyoked. Abomination comes where these are made to be unequal or unyoked. The reprobate comes by the seed of inequality and separation of the God factors, the two together that create the third, the child, who is love, goodness, truth, and beauty. These three become the undefilable oneness, mother, father, and child. These came from holy intrinsic spirit. All three are spirit forces, but their intending will create the physical factor. Word and subject is the soul of the all. Man is a child of the all. We will find answers to how it all works when we have patience and follow these intercourses. When we corrupt that intercourse, we corrupt love. Corrupted love leads to lack of empathy and hate. We always engage with the opposite pole in order to be challenged and to create with precision. When you subtract language from the concept of intercourse, you trap your mind to three dimensions and it will not open to the higher plane of the gods. God is in the open mind. You must relate to higher sources in the spiritual manner. You say, I love the beautiful sunset. Then someone conspires and uses an invisible hammer to hit you on top of the head every time you look at a sunset. Eventually, you avoid looking at the thing that you love and you wonder why sunsets are so awful. But this demon writes a note everywhere saying that sunsets come when the children of devils play in the sky. And everywhere you go, you see those signs. A mind was seduced and ravaged. For you have to teach your children that to avoid the headache, they should never look at the sunset. After that generation, the other one that comes will declare their hate for sunset and might even believe that it is ugly. There is a similar thing that happened with the ancient Germanic people that went to war. They polarized their own mindsets and had sexual intercourse with men. Soon they hated and abused their women. When warriors went to destroy other people, they took and defiled their women. Now these people were even defiling the men, especially little boys. There is no greater trauma than the trauma of abomination through polarizing the natural order. Because it was the abomination against the natural order, it affected the Germanic society, magnified their hate for their own mothers, and amplified the decrease of their populations. They took from this a new way of how to destabilize other nations, even to affect their populations by making the abomination the authentic way. It is like telling people that HIV should be accepted as a way of life, and no one should discriminate against it. Therefore, to refuse to sleep with a HIV patient without protection is against that person's right. It is the effect of polarizing magic, defiling them by making wrong seem right and confusing free will with natural law as if it has to be one or the other. Free will is that a man can do as he likes as long as he does not interfere with the other. Abominating will is that which creates a condition that makes the wrong thing be the right. This is a deliberate thing, but it is a conspicuous act of witchcraft to destabilize and destroy by these polarizing sex magic acts. Give the person in the wrong a false sense of justice or a false sense of injustice, and you have it. Ain't it? He knows he's wrong, but no more does he feel like he's wrong because you now give him a false sense of injustice. The black man all across the world carries the trauma of that ravaging and will forever stay in defense of themselves. The Western world's deliberate push against these black societies is to traumatize by applying this memory spell. Like they have a deliberate push on black societies to force upon them laws of inclusion for homosexuals because they know that their people, those men, out of 199 of them were homosexuals, and they were traumatizing the populations that they attacked with even ravaging their sons in front of them, their little boys, because some of them prefer the little boys, and sometimes they have to bring these little boys to their rulers like their kings and other nobles. One way or the other, it will have the effect, even if the black nations do not accept the white man's rule. It will have an effect. That act of sorcery will still be creating mayhem in their society by putting that sense of injustice in the mind of the black homosexual who had no problem being himself in a society that goes the natural way until he was told it shouldn't be so, that his way of life was actually the norm or maybe another norm. It is like telling the man with AIDS that he was never ill, just discriminated against, and therefore he needs no treatment. This is not to say that the homosexual needs treatment, although I would say that in my own self, he must choose for himself according to the book of free will. But yet, I will add, the masses must also protect their natural way. Word is mind, subject is matter, and creation is the object of manifested ideal. Study the natural way, even thought itself. Everything in science will only replicate what occurs in nature. Everything in science will only replicate that which occurs in nature. You know more than you think you know. Africans are learning what Africans already know from Europeans, and because it is a corrupted version, seeing it as something different. This is the deepest sorcery, for by this way their modes are twisted and confused. They are dependent for the definition of even themselves. Witchcraft by way of abracadabra is greater than guns and fighter jets. Look up the power of a Bible or the power of a norm that makes homosexuality in charge of heterosexuality. But the subject is so badly mindfucked that he does not know, walking around in homosexual gear, casting subliminal homosexual messages in his rainbow socks, but singing boom bye bye. We are fixing the problem of being too caught up in the physical trap to move out of the 3D matrix. As above, so below, as in the physical, so in the spiritual. We also have DNA in the flesh, and every experience is written simultaneously. You can be living in a far off country and your child gets sick, but you know. Some people listen better than others. DNA magic spells will magnify the trauma that rests in the DNA or make them readable to natural processes of mind or perception, even if to affect the subject from a subconscious port. All DNA have all information, but not all is readable under every circumstance. A man could not impregnate a woman by simply putting his saliva inside her uterus. The DNA is not readable. Therefore, the file that was made readable is what he has to insert. DNA memory spell is similar. It is the trauma that triggers and makes the files readable. My friends, I have talked for long enough. Let's continue these topics in our next video. Peace out.